Step 1 Academy. I'm Dr. C. Please join me in this musical journey. Let's go! Hello, everybody. I'm today with Jessica Messere, my dear friend.
Like Dr. Sarek said, I am Jessica Messere. I am a cellist. I have been playing for probably over 28 years. I'm currently the manager at Savannah Music Festival's SMF Jazz Academy, which is an after-school jazz music education program that we do here at Savannah Chatham County Public School System.
I believe you have an extensive experience as teacher back in Atlanta and then here in Savannah.
I've had the most wonderful opportunities to teach all different levels, as young as 6 years old up to college students and even above. And then I've also had the opportunity to teach at a very similar program that what we do here in Savannah, the SMF Jazz Academy. In Atlanta, there's another program called Atlanta Music Project. And both of these programs are after-school programs. And the really neat thing about it is it really tries to focus on like the social justice aspect of the education work that we do within the communities, making sure that all students are able to get high quality music education, even though they may be in a position of an underserved community or somewhat underprivileged in some way. So we just get rid of all that and we provide stuff to them.
Can you tell us how you started playing cello? I mean, how you ended up with playing this cool instrument?
I had the opportunity to learn an instrument when I was 9 years old, so in elementary school, and it was a brand new program that they were starting, and I did not want to play the cello at all. I thought, oh my God, it's too big and it looks weird. What is that? And then I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll play the violin because it looked pretty and everybody knows the violin. When you play the cello, you have to sit and you have to hug the cello between your knees. And I thought, well, I'll never have to wear a dress again because I hated dresses when I was younger. And I decided instead, this is my 9-year-old brain thinking to myself, when I saw the violin, I thought violinists all have to stand. And I was thinking, oh, I don't want to stand the whole time. So I'll pick cello and I'll never have to wear a dress again. And so my very first concert, my mother made me wear a dress. I was so angry. And this was, in the 80s where they had the big poofy sleeves. And so while I'm playing, I had these like big poofy sleeves on the side of my face. But after that, I really ended up falling in love with it. It really has like a great way of combining the really high violins to almost as low as the basses. So we can get super high and we can get super low. And I really like to have that kind of versatility. When I started, it was in the school program, it was an after school program that was offered. And this was in Virginia. Through that, I did not take lessons. My family thought that I would be better at doing just the after school program. They didn't understand the benefits of having private lessons. Through that, I worked really, really hard. I tried to be like the best at it. I wanted to be like first chair and all that stuff, the drive for it. Sometimes I had better solos or something. It was just more of like this time where I learned the cello, just had fun playing in orchestra. It was very fun in the beginning. And then I wanted to really up my game and start taking private lessons. Now, sometimes you hear about kids who start as young as 3 years old to take private lessons. I didn't have that opportunity until I was in 10th grade. When I was around that age, I really wanted to play piano more. And so I shifted and I took lessons in piano, but not cello.
Can you maybe, remember a moment when you said, okay, this is really what I want to do in life. Like I really want to be a musician.
Okay, so it may sound a little cliche, but it was Yo-Yo Ma that I saw, first heard a recording of, and I thought that's what I want to be. That was pretty much it. It was really like just hearing and seeing and then like trying to research about his performances and seeing him perform. And then I discovered that he's done like chamber music. And so I started looking into chamber music when I was younger and I started falling in love with that. Now, as far as trying to make it possibly a career, wasn't until later on. But for me, when I decided for it to be like an actual career where I want to pursue it, possibly in college or in my future, I was playing a concert. And in the concert, I had this moment where I felt so happy. I felt so much joy in what I was playing. And interestingly enough, it was like a sad piece, but I was so happy that I had this like privilege to produce this music. And maybe at the time I thought, oh, I could have done it better. But regardless, I thought it was so cool that here I was collectively playing in a group, like an orchestra, and we were making these beautiful sounds based on little scratches on paper. Celli is a all-female cello quartet. It consists of 4 cellists that we all met in some capacity of Martha Gerschefski's studio. We had a time in Savannah Philharmonic where we happened to be all playing that performance or that series of concerts, and we were playing and we were right next to each other. So the 4 of us were there and we were having a blast. We just thought, you know what, why don't we try to play in an ensemble? And the first time that we tried in an ensemble was at my wedding. I had arranged some music to surprise my partner, because one of the Celli girls, their husband plays trumpet, and my partner plays trumpet. And so I arranged a piece for that. And then it was like, you know what, why don't we keep doing this? We started off playing fairly classical music and then eventually found a way of smushing popular music with classical music.
You can tell us a brief history about cello.
So the cool thing I like about the cello, I had mentioned about how it's able to get really high and really low. And back in the day, before the cello looked like this, there was something very similar to it called the viola da gamba. And it came in different ranges. And so there would be like a deep bass one, there'd be like a tenor one, and they would all be different sizes. It was played without any of the modern stuff that's on it now. The modern cello, you have something called an end pin. And generally it's a metal long pin that helps anchor it into the ground so that it can stay steady while it's between your knees. A Baroque cello, you would actually, instead of holding the cello between your knees, you did a combination of your knees and your calves. It's a little bit more upright. And it looks like, you know, the cello is facing directly towards the audience. Now with a modern cello, I'll bring up my in pin, and it helps it again anchor into the floor and creates a slope so that when you play, 1, it's closer to your body. 2, you can have it in your periphery to look at your fingers. Another thing that's really different about the modern cello versus the Baroque cello is that the strings now are made of steel or some form of precious metal. And then the Baroque had gut strings. There was very little that was probably not used back then, and they discovered that gut strings worked really well. They had a very mellow sound. I really like the sound of the Baroque cello, but the other thing that's different about the modern cello is that the steel strings lets it get really loud. So our lowest string on the cello is the C string. And then from there, higher, we'll go G, and then D, and then A. And I'll show you what the lowest string sounds like. And this, again, is the C string. The A is the highest string that we have, but it's not the highest sound that we can produce. So we've got here, and we can get as high as, we can even play.
I would say to me, the cello always was closest to the human voice range.
If you ever listen to somebody speaking, that's kind of that term you might not know called a timbre. So there's kind of a certain inflection or tone that voices have. And the cello kind of fits into that. We can get really high and we can get more in a vocal singing soprano range, which is one of the top sounding voices. And then we can get as low as like a baritone. And a baritone is pretty much the lowest of what the singing voices are. And actually still have a very good projection.
I always felt that if it's a very deep, emotional, kind of heartfelt melody, I believe that 9 out of 10 times you'll find it in cello. It's like that depth that I think that cello has. It's an unparalleled.
When you're playing an orchestra in the beginning, there's not much of melodies that are given to the cello section or the bass section to the lower strings, but you will get it in the future. Some composers wrote beautiful lines for cello, some just beautifully crafted melodies that sometimes, like you said, like a composer is trying to show either like the humility or just this kind of essence that maybe a violin can't quite convey. The neat thing sometimes I always say about being a classical performing cellist is that I get to sit in a chair, play music, and get paid for it. And I find that to be very, very, that is like such privilege, you know, like that, how lucky I am to be able to say that that's my job. When you're playing your violin, you know, based on the length of your fingerboard, most likely you can just shift your elbow and be able to reach some of those sections. We can shift our elbow, but when we do, our thumb has to pop up because it's kind of stuck under around here, based on how many inches this fingerboard is. So when that happens, we pull our thumb up and we actually play in something called thumb position. And so our thumb position really is where, one, our thumb is on the string, and two, it's actually playing a note. We can actually use our thumb to play at the same time. Some people ask me, like, does that hurt for you? And in the beginning, yes. Just like if you were running a marathon, your first time you try to run, when you come home, maybe the next day you're sore. And that's kind of the same thing with playing in thumb position, is that you'll develop some rough skin and a callus. But I tell everybody, as soon as your fingers get used to it, they adapt and you can play for hours afterwards. So one of the things about a cello bow is it's shorter than a violin bow, and it's actually a little bit thicker and sometimes a little bit heavier. The heavier that the bow is, the more that you'll have to use your fingers to be on the bow. So if you notice bass players, they've got a bigger bow. They have their hands, their fingers draped over. So cellos are very similar. We've got our pinky here. We've got our first and three fingers that lean onto the side. And the difference that violins have is that they'll have their pinky up top.
Then I see that little detail on your on the scroll or the head of your cello, that you actually have 4 strings, but you have 2 pegs. And what I mean, you break those 2? Or?
Yes, no, I did not break my cello. So what it is that I like to play with just my cello very, very close. Like you mentioned, 2 pegs would normally be sticking out just like these are. And with the elimination of those pegs, I can get a little bit closer. But people ask me, how are you going to tune it? Because these are used for tuning. And so pegs, you literally just turn clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on, you know, what the pitch is. I have a key that goes in, and it's got like a big bulb on the end, so it makes it easy for me to grip and to turn.
I really enjoyed this chat with you about cello, and I think a lot of people will learn something that they never heard about the cello.
I would just like to use this time to thank you so much for allowing me to be on this program today, and to have an opportunity to talk to your followers and just give them a little bit more knowledge about the cello. I think you're right on. If they have questions or want to know more, contact a music teacher and they can tell you more about the cello.
Thank you very much for this chat, and I hope you're going to have a great rest of the summer and you're going to stay safe and healthy.